Welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Lens with your hosts, Jake and Scott. It is Bourbon Heritage Month, and we are excited to talk about two heritage distilleries. So sit back and buckle in to the latest episode of the Bourbon Lens. Scott, September's upon us. We have your favorite style of whiskey, bourbon, in our glass. I mean, are you jumping out your gym shorts today or what?
Yeah, I mean, I've been looking forward to Bourbon Heritage Month for like 6 months or so. Not that I was wishing away time, but it surely did go fast.
It sure has snuck up on us. Kentucky Bourbon Festival will be in our rearview mirror as this podcast drops, which is very interesting. It is Christmas in September for the bourbon enthusiast from around the country and even around the world. And there's no better way to celebrate Kentucky Bourbon Festival, Kentucky bourbon in general, than to talk a little bit about Heaven Hill and Jim Beam. And what do those two distillers have in common, you might ask? 7-year age-stated bourbons. So I've seen a lot of people, and I'm sure you have as well, talk about the old Fit 7 Bottled in Bond versus the new Old Granddad Bottled in Bond. Well, one's weeded, one's not. So let's talk about rye bourbons and the ever popular, always decreasing in price at Costco, Heaven Hill 7-year Bottled in Bond. So first and foremost, what do you think about the crazy price drop in this bottle since it released over 2 years ago?
I'm obviously very happy because, there was some consternation about the pricing jumping up after they added a year. But I knew that it would kind of level off once the hype kind of died down and it became more of an everyday offering. And we all know that, like, Heaven Hill always talks about their impressive stocks of whiskey. So it's not like they're struggling to find 7-year barrels right now. So I think it'll just keep coming down, and I think the consumer will benefit from it. The consumer is obviously benefiting from the age-stated, products, not just bonded, which is 4 years or at least, but we're actually getting an age-stated stamp on the bottle that's telling us how old it is. In the case of some of them, they're telling us when it was distilled and when it was bottled, so you can even maybe compare, your bottle to another bottle or, that you find down the road and just see how they might change a little bit. Probably not drastically change, but there will probably be some slight differences.
For sure. And I think it's very interesting. This bottle, I think, originally came out at $59.99. Now is under $40 at Costco, which is amazing. I think this is an everyday offering at $40. Getting close to $60. It's, buy on a special occasion type deal. And it's a really good bourbon. We're going to talk about this because we're going to try it side by side with Jim Beam's latest innovation, which is to innovate an old product, which is Old Granddad 7. You may know of the Old Granddad Bonded or the 114, but this comes in at 7 years at 100 proof. So we never knew what the original Bonded was from an age perspective, but this one having an age statement, says a lot, I think, coming out of Beam. And also we've mentioned Knob Creek age statements coming back for a while. It also talks about how much whiskey Jim Beam has as well.
Yeah, same thing. The consumer is the ultimate beneficiary of it. Years ago, we talked about, they're taking age statements off, and that's going to mean everything's getting younger. And it probably did for a period of time as they tried to find the stocks to supply the masses. But now that they've got the supply, I think that, they're going to start to flex their muscles about ages and, special releases, things like that. So, we were just talking about, like, was Bottled in Bond kind of the flag in the sand for craft distillers. And when they hit that 4-year milestone, they can put out a bonded product. Now the big guys are saying, it's not just 4 years, it's a minimum of 4 years. And here's our, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12-year-old Bottled in Bond. So
yeah, it's definitely very interesting. And, but it's an exciting time, right? In all honesty, to think about the age and the growth of stocked aged whiskey. I'm just excited. We got to go to Jim Beam Day. I guess it'll be in the rearview mirror about 2 weeks, 3 weeks at that point. And just the innovation that they're coming out with. I mean, their whiskey is just good. And I say whiskey because they're doing a lot of experimental stuff, right? And I think Fred and Freddie have a really good beat on what the consumer wants. And I think age-stated whiskey is one of them.
Yeah. I mean, from Beam's perspective, everybody always thought it was, high rye mash bill, which was the Baker's and the old granddad mash bill, as they call it. And then there was the medium or low rye Jim Beam mash bill. But there is so much more out there, even in terms of bourbon. Like the one that we got to try was the brown rice bourbon.
Yeah.
Which has been incorporated in smaller proportions into larger bourbon batches, but including that Sunshine batch, which I had the other night, and it's very interesting. But it incorporates a small amount of the brown rice just to add some extra sweetness and character, I guess you could say.
I was really interested. That brown rice bourbon, I got it on my way out. I thought it was a really good pour, honestly. It was unique. It was sweet. It was has some savory notes to it. I didn't sit down with it, but I think a couple years ago. And so I think never standing still. I know that's Bardstown Bourbon Company's motto, but the way people are just continuing to innovate in the whiskey bourbon sphere to still make bourbon, but different flavoring grains, different profiles, to make new things that consumers get excited about, I think is always awesome. And they're not just saying, oh, it's only American single malt. Let's try everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. And just the creative blends.
Yeah.
I mean, that they can make now that, I think we're going to probably start seeing a lot of American whiskey, which might include bourbon, rye, a little bit of single malt, like blends. I think that's probably something we'll see, but I don't know. I don't want to predict the future, but because it's definitely an interesting time.
I mean, who knows, right? With the demand right now down, right? Everyone overcorrects. What's going to happen in 4 to 5 years when everyone's like, let's ratchet that thing back up again. And then, bourbon goes scarce. So it's going to be very interesting to see kind of the start and stop of brown spirits. As we've got a new generation coming of age, we've got, funds and discretionary income issues and things like that. I think the world's at its oyster, but today we're not going to talk about the crap that gets everyone to stay up at night. We're going to talk about drinking the actual whiskey. So the Heaven Hill 7-year, Bottled and Bond, I think is a really good pour. And I should have done this blind. I feel like failure. But so when I think about Heaven Hill, I think this is a quintessential Heaven Hill pour on everything through and through. So when you think about this 7-year bonded product versus the 6-year bonded, which we did actually at 7, shout out to 7 for hosting us and allowing us to try their fall cocktail menu and have some eats. We then stayed and did a little side by side of this versus the 6-year. What's your thoughts when it comes to this whiskey in particular?
I mean, it's what I've kind of built my love for Kentucky bourbon on. It's, the Heaven Hill lineup has been like my default. Like if I'm recommending somebody to taste a Kentucky bourbon, what should it taste like? I'm going to probably suggest something from Heaven Hill. So in terms of what I expect out of an age stated bottled and bond product, easy to drink, not going to kill you on the proof, not going to kill you on the spice. It's going to have a little sweetness. It's going to have some body to it at 100 proof. And I'm still going to get my corn. It doesn't go away with, 6, 7, 8 years of age. Maybe it does after like 15, 20. Not had a whole lot of 20-year-old Heaven Hill, unfortunately.
Maybe one day.
But yeah, maybe one day, maybe in the next couple of years, there will be a surplus of that laying around and they'll be putting that out at $100 a bottle. Yeah.
And
we can all dream.
We can only hope. This one's really interesting. When I first opened it, I remember it being just okay, right? It just wasn't like something that I was like, man, this is just $60 worth of bourbon. But I tell you what, the more this opens up, and I've experienced this with a lot of Heaven Hill bottles, you let that oxidize for a little bit, you get a lot more deep, rich notes. Cherry cola comes to my mind in this one. That pairs really well with like that caramel corn note that's in here to meet that. So I think it's a really inviting pour. I always think that Heaven Hill does great when you open up. Do a pour, drink it, however you want, and then just let that bottle sit for a week or two, a month, a year, 10. I don't know. And
if you can make it last that long,
trust me, I'm really milking the Old Fitz 15. Thursday Thoughts last week I did Old Fitz 15 versus Augusta 15, and I'm like, oof, this bottle's almost gone. This is really sad. It's going to be a sad day because it's a hell of a bottle. But this opens up to be a really good pour, and I think it deserves the ability to go drink it how you like it. Neat. Rocks, cocktail. I think this bottle's got a lot of versatility, and especially if you get it at the Costco price around $40, I think you really found a really great value.
Yeah, I mean, I think that where this shines is at 7 years, you get a little bit more complexity that I typically don't get with, JTS Brown, for instance, or
Evan Williams,
White Label, Evan Williams. You get like one or two notes. You might get a little bit more on the nose than you would on the palate, and then it's just a simple bourbon. But as you get a little bit up in age, you get a little bit more characteristics of I get like black tea, like a little bit of astringency. I don't know if it's just like the barrel influence, but the like cracked black pepper, black tea. Cola, I could probably see a little bit of that. Maybe like a little bit of like fruit, but not like bright fruits, not like oranges and apples and things like that. It's more of that, that dark cherry,
tannic,
cherry cola, syrupy, cocktail cherries, I guess you could kind of say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in on those things, and it's one of those things where you think about why Jimmy Russell loves 7 to 9 year old bourbon, right? A guy that's been doing it a really long time. He loves 7 to 9 year old bourbon because it's kind of a sweet spot. I feel like 7 on the front end, 9 on the back end. I think that's why he released an 8-year-old 101. But I think, this is a really great representation of Heaven Hill. Obviously, if you want the, a little more age-stated stuff, you go with the Elijah Craig, but that's a barrel proof, right? They don't have Elijah Craig bottled in bond, at 12, 15 years, which would be really cool to see a bottled in bond at an extended age. A Heaven Hill 10, 12, right? Just to see what it would be different there overall, which, leads me to the innovation here, right? With Jim Beam and Old Grandad. One of my favorite cocktail pours is Old Grandad 114. I think it's a great way to elevate your cocktail and give it a lot of brightness and oomph. And now they've come out with a bottled in bond 7-year, dialed back the proof 14 points, but give you an age statement. And, really has that Jim Beam high rye mash bill. We did a little exploration, or you did an exploration prior to the podcast. And, it's coming in around 27% on the rye content. Or high rye bourbon.
Yeah, pretty high rye. It's what they call the Jim Beam high rye mash bill. Baker's and Old Grandad are probably the most popular of those, but it's going to bring some of that punch. I know at like the lower aged, the bonded is what they call it. Old Grandad bonded, which is kind of the predecessor to this. It's probably closer to 4 or 5 years old. But when you pour that in a glass, it kind of punches you. And similarly with the 114 Old Grandad, the squat bottle, which is a hell of a deal. Also, not to keep plugging Costco, but if you're not shopping at Costco for your liquor, you're paying probably too much. But $20 for Old Grandad 114.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're looking for something that's gonna stand up in cocktails, that's gonna keep you warm at night, it's going to be a good campfire whiskey. Like we're going into fall, like grab you a bottle of that. So, but obviously it doesn't have the age characteristics that a lot of people like. It's going to have a little bit more harsher bite, a little bit more sharp edges. That's what the age benefit is for these bigger brands when they're distilling. Yeah,
it's definitely the rounding part for the age perspective. And Steve Coombs loves Old Granddad 114. He talks about making great cocktails with that. So, if it's good enough for Steve Coombs, it's good enough for me, in all honesty. But, what's really interesting about this is, can Jim Beam ever get away from Jim Beam? Like, there's always an element of nuttiness to it. But this one is like caramel nuttiness. Like, it's like caramel popcorn and you mix some peanuts in it. It's like, it does give you a little fair vibes on the nose, which is very interesting. This is the first time I've ever had it. This iteration of the Old Granddad 7 Bottled-in-Bond. So it's a very interesting nose, right? Because it's got some traditional Jim Beam notes, but it's then just different enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't get a lot of the nuttiness on the nose. I get a little bit more of the spice characteristics. It doesn't have a huge, like, I wouldn't write 1,000 tasting notes for the nose on this one. It's kind of a little bit more one or two notes. For me, it's like black pepper and a little bit of like, it has like a little bit of like that malty, like malted grain note to me.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
So grainy characteristic.
Yeah.
But
the
where this
bouquet
one
on this is not very big, but
yeah, where this one benefits is definitely on the palate, I think.
Yeah, I think the other note is caramel. Like, I know that's kind of a cop out, and I'm so tired of people like, oh, every bourbon tastes like vanilla caramel.
It's smooth.
It's smooth jazz.
It's smooth caramel.
But like, I feel like there's multiple types of caramel. Like, explain your caramel. Like, this is like candied caramel. Like, you've melted it down and you're going to put it over soft serve. Like, that's what I get.
The one thing my parents got me for my birthday, well, they just, in addition, to dinner or whatever, but they gave me a thing of candies, which are those, the caramels that have the cream in the inside. I have no idea what they're called. I just call them caramel creams. That caramel is what I get in a lot of bourbon, and I think that's why I probably like them so much. But you get a little bit of that creamy center as well, and that's
yeah. But I think that's the beauty of it, right? Like, we could write a million tasting notes, but no one's going to taste the whiskey the exact way I taste it, the exact way you taste it. Our job is to describe it the best way we possibly can, and hopefully you find it enjoyable and you drink it. But going back to this 7-year, I think what you said is right. The bonded and the 114 typically have a lot of spikes in them. It's like it's a bad bar graph. This one kind of like crescendos and then just kind of falls off. It doesn't have a lot of back end finish, for it being as spicy as on the nose for me. I don't know about you. But it does have body and characteristics, but it's different. I would say it's less of a tannic mouthfeel and more oily, if that makes sense. Where it doesn't like make me salivate like the Heaven Hill does. Like, it just like kind of zaps my palate. This has a lot of complexities that I think are a little more oily in character.
Yeah, I don't know. One of my notes was that it feels a little bit like bright, effervescent. Like when it hits your tongue, it kind of like tingles a few of the taste buds. Which I think of like when you're drinking like a carbonated soda or sparkling water or something like that. So it kind of like wakes up your taste buds. But it doesn't have a super long finish, but I do get the nuttiness at the end as that kind of effervescence kind of fades. More like a walnut, like a little bit of bitter note. But the peanut note, it's there, but it's not as prevalent as I get like in younger Beam products. But yeah, I think Beam's not going to get away from the nutty notes. It's
the yeast.
Yeah, Heaven Hill, you're going to get some corn. You're going to get a little bit of grain. Jack Daniels, you're going to get a little bit of that banana.
Yeah.
Buffalo Trace, what do they say? Like the cherry note that kind of carries through.
Hey, and that Angel's Envy, you're going to get chocolate.
You're going to get chocolate. Lots of chocolate.
Oh, man.
The one thing we did not note.
Favorite memory.
Yeah. The one thing we did not note about the Heaven Hill 7-year is they just announced the Artist Series.
They did. That is true. You can check out bourbonlens.com for that.
Which, interestingly, the MSRP on that is $49.99. So you're going to see this continue to be a lower price point. And they're damn good looking bottles. Bree Bowers. I'm not familiar with a lot of her art, but those bottles are sick. And if you want just like a great souvenir bottle of next time you come on the Bourbon Trail or go to Heaven Hill or just come to Kentucky, period, those are excellent. They just have the different, I think is there 3 different designs or 4?
3 different ones. So there's the Springs, there's Downtown Bernheim, and then there is the Heaven Hill Distillery Experience.
Yeah. So that, keep your eyes open for that when you're looking for the 7-year bonded.
Well, it's really interesting, right? Because like this is kind of muted, right?
But that's like the classic Heaven Hill distillery.
Exactly. And then you have the artist series is bright and vibrant. And I think that's about like the growth and the new leadership. And like, obviously Max still has influence. But you know, the Shapiro family like continues to evolve and grow. And so, you know, I do like the simple design on this. I think it's a great looking bottle.
It's classic.
It is. It's just a nice bottle. Do I miss the square bottles? Of course I do, but I understand what they're trying to do in elevating their product.
Well, everything came in a square bottle for the longest time, you know. It's like, oh, that was just like the standard bottle. So not, you know, you've got to stand out on a shelf. Speaking of which, if you miss Old Granddad on a shelf, you are clearly colorblind.
It's orange.
Yeah. I mean, you're walking down, if you don't see that orange label standing out, you know, on this one, it's got a little bit of gold. The Bonded has a little bit more gold.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you miss this when you're walking down the bar, you know, walking down the bar or the shelves, get your eyes checked.
So I do have to ask, right? It would be remiss if I didn't ask you one important question. If you had to buy a bottle with Scott Dilly's hard-earned money, which bottle would you buy?
I'm going to look for that new artist series for sure.
Yeah. I think for the fact, because it's new, I would probably steer clear of the Old Granddad 7 because I think it might be harder to find, and I would go just pick up another bottle of Heaven Hill 7-year. I think Old Granddad's good. I think the Heaven Hill is just more my profile.
Yeah, I think that the two, they appeal to different types of people too. Do you want a lot more of the spicy characteristic? Do you want more of like a traditional sweeter, like corn and candy notes? And people do draw that battle line. They're like, I like Jim Beam. I like Heaven Hill. Nothing wrong with that. Fortunately, both of them have tons of whiskey that appear in different labels. For sure. Well, let us know in the comments below which one you like, which one you prefer. We'd love to know. If you're not following us on YouTube, we'd love to have you like and subscribe this video. We'd really appreciate it as it helps our reach and growth as we continue to bring you great content. And as always, we'll catch you next time. Cheers. Cheers. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bourbon Lens. Make sure you're connected with Scott and I via social media on Instagram, X, and Facebook. We'd love to connect. And if you're more the professional type, follow us over on LinkedIn. If you want to know more about Bourbon Lens, make sure you're subscribed to our weekly newsletter, The Weekly Pour. For exclusive content and more, check out Patreon. Follow us there at Bourbon Lens. And last but not least, on your favorite podcast listening app, make sure you're subscribed because every Monday, Scott and I release a podcast, and we would love to have you here listening to the newest features and the newest whiskey news. And until next time, cheers.